Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kagiyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. And like the mountains in the back, my background, it's starting to get colder in Texas, but the weather has actually been really nice for the most part. A little cooler at night, but it's all good. And I just want to share. I'm a stage 4 prostate bone and lung cancer patient slash survivor and been dealing with cancer since early 2021, doing very well. And I've had a crazy opportunity to babysit my 1-year-old granddaughter for the last 8 days, and I'll see her today. And yesterday she officially started walking, and that was a big moment. She took about the longest walk she ever had. In fact, I filmed it, and she took about 45 consecutive steps, which is really, really huge for her. And it was exciting moment, and we're probably in a lot of trouble, but it was still exciting nonetheless. And today, what I want to do is get into a great conversation with my special guest, Cynthia Mitchell. Cynthia, please tell us where you're from, and a little bit about your background, and we're going to get into a great conversation and interview. Cynthia.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. I am from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And like Houston, the weather is changing. Unlike Houston, we already have snow. So it is much colder here and snow covered, but it is very festive, so I'll take it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm outside of Abilene, but
okay. Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
so more north, but
More north, but still
it's same state.
yeah. Sorry. Um, but yes, I am a mother and wife, and I'm also a teaching is my profession, and I have stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma, which is also known as bile duct cancer.
And for those of you who recall, we did interview Melinda Bikini, who's in charge of the uh, Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, and also Cynthia knows Melinda. So let's talk about your journey, because and by the way, what grade students do you teach?
Oh, I taught most grades, elementary grades, but I spent the bulk of my career in either grade 4 or kindergarten classrooms. So I've had a nice range, but I do hold a special place in my heart for those little kinders. Yeah.
They're so
Uh,
cute.
oh, they are. They're adorable. They are absolutely adorable. And I haven't worked since my diagnosis, but I have very fond memories of many years in the classroom. But yeah.
Awesome. Do you plan to go back at some point?
I think I have found perhaps some new passions over the last few years since my diagnosis, including advocacy and connecting communities. So I think that there's likely a place for that should I return to work, but there'll always be a piece of my heart in the classroom. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So let's talk about your cancer journey and how it started. What were you experiencing when prior to diagnosis?
Yeah, so in the fall of, well, really the summer of 2021, I had experienced some unusual heartburn. So that was uncharacteristic for me. I have never really had heartburn, but it was persistent. It was mild, but it was persistent, and it just really felt like something was off. Um, I was otherwise very healthy and active. I ate well. And it just seems like something was off. So I made an appointment with my family doctor, and was told that it was likely a symptom of perimenopause, and that if it persisted, I could return. And I did go home, and I sat on it for a few days, and then I thought, no, this isn't right. This is something my body was telling me something is wrong. So I called back, I made another appointment. I went in and I said, at the very least, can we do an ultrasound of my abdomen? Like, let's just take a look and see. And sure enough, a few weeks later, that ultrasound in the fall of 2021 revealed that there was a mass on my liver. And it took quite a few months to determine that it was cholangiocarcinoma. It was just before December, oh, it was just before Christmas of 2021, when they confirmed that it was very likely cholangiocarcinoma, and then booked a liver resection surgery for uh, early January of 2022.
Why do you think it took so long to get your diagnosis?
I think it's a common story that we hear with cholangiocarcinoma patients. Part of it is that, yeah, the road to diagnosis can be long and not very clear for cholangiocarcinoma patients. In my case, it took a number of tests and specialists to recognize that the tumor looked like a cholangiocarcinoma tumor. So perhaps I think what ended up ultimately happening is the right person took a look at it, which was a liver surgeon, and
Ah,
said, this is definitely a cholangiocarcinoma tumor.
okay. So once you got your diagnosis, then what? How did it affect you, as far as your emotions and your your outlook?
Mhm. I think for me, it was perhaps obviously devastating news, especially, one of the first things you do with cholangiocarcinoma is learn that the prognosis can be quite grim. And I felt like in that moment, I had the choice. I had had a friend a while before I was diagnosed, a friend who really struggled along her journey. And I recognized that um, that she perhaps struggled in a way that I didn't want to struggle. And I think that I did not want to look at my journey as one that was going to take over my life in a negative way. And I decided in that moment that I was going to, despite grief and the pain that this diagnosis caused me, myself and my family, that we were going to move forward with joy and optimism and love and hope.
I bet that's awesome. So how old was your child at that point?
I have two children, and at that time, my children were 7 and 4 at the time of diagnosis.
So how did you deal with them as far as your cancer went?
Yeah, so until we knew, my mother is a retired social worker, so I have lots of experience with what's appropriate in terms of talking with your children and what's not, and she was very helpful along the way. Um, but until we had all of the information, we chose to keep the information to ourselves. And at a point when we had the information, we felt like we could answer our children's questions honestly. We we did not raise it with them. But once we had the information, we raised it, we shared, but we also assured them that we were going to do our best to make sure that I was as well as possible for as long as possible. And one of the commitments that my husband and I made to each other from the very beginning was that we would continue to give our children rich and full lives. And by extension, that forced my husband and I to do the same for ourselves.
Okay, that sounds great. So what were your husband's thoughts, when he heard your diagnosis?
You know, it's interesting because I think one thing that my husband, he's always been a remarkable support. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. But I remember him looking at me and he just said, it is going to be okay, no matter what happens. And that includes me becoming well again or me passing. It is going to be okay. We are going to live in this moment and we are going to love each other and we are going to be joyful and hopeful. And his, I think his outlook and my outlook, well, they matched beautifully, but I think it also really gave us a clear path forward on how we wanted to live our lives.
That is that is fantastic. I love to hear that. And so what would you say would be your driving force as far as, you know, uh, your mindset moving forward? What was driving that?
Well, I think there were a few key factors. One is I'm very persistent. Um, I, my mom always says she never was good at accepting no as a child. So I think that's probably part of it. I just remember thinking when I had a reoccurrence shortly after surgery and I was told that I now had stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma and that it was a terminal illness. I just thought to myself, well, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not. I just refuse to accept that. Um, and so I think that was one thing. It was just this unwillingness to accept an answer that I didn't like. But also it was this commitment to seeing the small things around us and appreciating the small things around us and recognizing the joy and the love. So yeah, I think there's two main components to my outlook, a driving force, which was, yeah, perhaps some might call it resiliency, but the other piece was just a willingness to live joyfully.
What are you calling small things?
I think, well, one thing I always say with the kids is that big love happens in small moments. So just truthfully appreciating life. Like, well, I mean, I remember the first time after diagnosis, I saw both of my kids sitting at the piano that's just behind me here. And they were just playing a song, and I just sat there and I listened to them, and I thought, this is the most beautiful song I've ever heard. And then I realized they weren't even playing a song. They were just tapping on the keys. But I think it just, I don't know if without that diagnosis, I would have ever sat there and just really taken in that moment, that small thing, and allowed it to be big love. So I think the small things for me are the day-to-day things that happen that we don't necessarily always see if we don't have cause to see them or if we aren't looking for them because we're just so busy living life, but not necessarily truly living life, you know? So yeah, I think there's been so many. One of the other things we do as a family, is we look for found hearts in nature. So that's another small thing for us. And every time we find a small, a found heart in nature, whether it's a rock or a flower or a shadow, we take a picture and we make albums and it reminds us of the love that surrounds us. So that's another small thing for us. So I think it's just those day-to-day things that come up and just giving them more of an appreciation than you would have before.
So let me ask you this, okay? Now that you've had a lot of time to reflect back, those small things, are they really small or are they big?
I think they're actually really big. I think that we have learned that they may seem small in the moment, but they are the big things and the things that truly matter in our lives. And, I've heard you say in some of your other interviews, Mark, that you maybe wouldn't recognize those things without a cancer diagnosis. And it's not all good. I don't want to act like this has been, all roses. Um, but I think that I just feel like there are many unexpected gifts along this journey. And
Like what?
I think finding those moments that seem small and realizing the significance of them, that is one of those unexpected gifts. Your connections with others, those are those unexpected gifts. Creating moments, I mentioned earlier that, when we were talking earlier about going to a Taylor Swift concert, like those are small moments. Like I'll never forget being with my daughter at that concert, and I don't think she'll ever forget us being there together. So creating moments and memories. It's yeah, it's just I mean, there are just so many unexpected gifts. The connections you form with others, the communities that are created. Um, I think sometimes I can't believe I can hear myself saying this, but sometimes I say out loud and I think, wow, but I'm the happiest I've been in a really long time. And I think and that's very likely because I have found a part of myself that maybe was lost, right? And because it's all cancer doesn't change you completely, but it certainly does change you a little bit. But I think it also allows you to dig deep down inside of yourself and figure out what's really important to you. And then you have an opportunity to act on that.
That is so well said. That
Mm.
is really, really beautiful, and you articulated that so well. So let's talk about your kids and the things that, as you were diagnosed and you shared with them about your cancer. How did they take it? And how did they respond?
Yeah, I think you could tell that they were both quite scared. Um, and we tried to reassure them that everyone was going to do their best to take care of me. And I think that they truthfully believed that. They could tell the way that we were sharing it that it was going to be a team effort. But we also assured them that they would be continued to be loved and protected. And I think our children have really appreciated that honest and transparent approach since the very beginning. Um, there's been incidents, where the kids I think sometimes are a bit more, maybe they're experiencing emotions in a way that they wouldn't have had they not been given the information, but they certainly deserved to know that I was unwell and that I am unwell. Sometimes my kids still ask me, are you going to die? And I'm honest with them and I say I might, but but I'm certainly going to die one day. I mean, like I could be 85, I don't know, but I would hope that I'm alive and well for as long as possible. But I think there's a joy to my children that maybe they wouldn't be experiencing if it weren't for this journey as well. Because they truly get to see they have a different outlook on life too now, right? It's just holding on to these memories and really appreciating the time they had. We lost a very close family friend on Christmas Day the year before I was born, unexpectedly. And my daughter has said to me since then, after I was diagnosed, I'm so grateful that I have this time with you. Because our friends' children, they didn't get that time. It was a complete surprise. So it's really, I don't know, it's really heartwarming to see my own kids be able to put things into perspective too. And I don't know if they would be able to have that same perspective on life again without our cancer journey.
That is so, I love that. Absolutely love that. That is beautiful. And you know what I notice about, I've interviewed childhood cancer patients as well as actual children. I've done like dual interviews with the parent and a child.
Mm.
And what I've noticed is how mature, like the offspring are, and even with young cancer patients, how incredibly mature and articulate they are
Mhm.
about, what they've gone through. And do you see that in your kids?
I think so, absolutely. Um, I do see a maturity in my children, that's perhaps different than others. I also see a level of empathy in my children, that I think is unique to children that have been through major life events. My kids are really like my daughter, for example, and some of her friends organized fundraising this summer with one of our cancer centers here in Manitoba, and sold lemonade over the summer, and raised close to $20,000. Like, so just yeah, just taking on. I think
A
it
lot
motivates.
of lemonade.
Yeah, it was a lot of lemonade. It's a really phenomenal fundraiser that the foundation in Manitoba has every year, but the girls sort of became ambassadors for it this summer, and sold quite a lot of lemonade. Very successful. But just this, I see it in my son as well. He participated as much as he could, but just this desire to help others too. So there's this mature, empathetic side to my kiddos. And it's hard to say. Maybe they would have been like that anyhow. But I certainly think that our journey has influenced that.
So at this point, what are their thoughts as far as your prognosis? Are they comfortable with where you're at right now? Do they think like, oh, okay, mom's like over the hump and we're at least in a better spot than we were?
Yeah, I think for us, the last year has been a really great year. I had progression up until the fall of 2023 when things looked pretty dire for me. And then we were able to access a drug that has nearly eradicated all of the tumors in my liver. So
Wow.
my cancer is still there, but it's very minimal and I'm doing very well. So that's kind of been the boost that we needed, and we've been riding that wave. We have a confetti party every time I have a scan. And I think the kids, they're aware that that could change. But I think that they've learned to really just appreciate the right now, and that right now things are going well, and that if that changes, then we will all deal with that together as a family.
It was excellent. I mean, that's brings a lot of joy to my heart to hear that
Mm.
because I can really appreciate it because I've been through something very similar. So have you changed your diet at all?
Yeah, I have in the last 3 years, I've tried a number of different diets. I think that what I've found now in the last year is that I'm primarily plant-based, but I do eat quite a bit of animal protein. But it's always organic. And then I try to do local protein as much as possible, organic. And I limit my sugar, I limit my caffeine. So I've kind of found a nice balance, I feel like, at this point. But I certainly have tried a number of different diets per se. But I think clean eating has been the one that I have benefited the most from, which is just an overall, I just feel well overall, much more well than I really ever have. Um, and I would say part of that is diet, part of that is mindset, and part of that is science. But yes, I we are very mindful of how we eat. Mhm.
You have a really distinct glow about you.
Mhm.
And that's why I asked that question. Most of the time I don't ask that.
Oh.
And but I mean, I could tell people who have a cleaner diet as opposed to people that don't. So that's really, really awesome.
Mhm.
So let's talk more about your journey. You had a relapse, right?
I did, yes,
Okay, what
yes.
happened with that?
So in January of 2022, I had my liver resection, and my team was quite confident that they had removed all the cancer. I had clean margins, no lymph node involvement. Like it was a best case scenario for cholangiocarcinoma. I started 6 rounds of adjuvant chemotherapy just to mop things up and make sure there was nothing left over. But pretty soon after the surgery, I started having pain, which was unusual because pain wasn't really a symptom prior to diagnosis. So um, for a few months they continued me on my chemotherapy, but they felt that it was likely scar tissue and not a recurrence. And then unfortunately in the summer of 2022 they confirmed that there was a reoccurrence and there were multiple metastases to my liver.
So you had another surgery then.
Unfortunately, I didn't qualify for another surgery, so they started me on a chemotherapy and immunotherapy regime. And we ordered molecular testing to see if I had any targetable mutations, which I did, thankfully. So I finished up the new chemotherapy and immunotherapy regime. Um, and unfortunately, I had just had progression on that regime as well. So I moved to the targeted therapy. I had continued progression on that targeted therapy. I moved to another targeted therapy. I had continued progression, targeted therapy. And it was at that time that we did additional testing, which revealed a mutation, which is common in lung cancer. And there is a funded drug for it that is quite effective. And we were able to secure access to that drug. And that's the drug that's really changed the course of my disease at this point.
That is great. That is
Mm.
great. I mean, just what a great story that you have, and I loved hearing, about your family journey as well. Um, what would you like to leave our audience with as a final thought?
Hmm. I think I think for me, what I would like to share most is that along a journey with cancer, I think you have to hold space for all of the feelings. You have to honor all of your feelings. You have to give yourself grace. And then you also have to make sure that you set time and moments aside for joy and for love and especially for hope, because hope will carry you through. And whatever the outcome may be, hope will carry you through um, your journey. And I think if you can live fully and joyfully, um, there's there's nothing greater than that. There's no greater outcome than having lived your life with joy and love and hope.
I love that answer. Absolutely love that answer. One last question.
Mm.
If How would you, Cynthia, help make the world a better place?
Mm. Oh, that's a good one.
Because we
Um,
live in a very, uh, with all the distractions of social media and, politics and all these different factors, we're not, I don't know about how it is in Canada, but I think it's probably similar to what we experience in the United States. We live in a very divided society. And so how do we, you know, work to bring people together uh, in today's world?
yeah, I think the place where we start is with kindness, and I think empathy, um, and I think acceptance, but then also just a willingness to listen to others. And I mean, that really fits in so perfectly in even as simplistically as like a cancer community. You know, even if you take the global picture and you bring it down, um, just connecting with others, sharing our stories and our experiences, being vulnerable with one another, that builds connection, right? And the more connected we are, I think the more peaceful we are and the more at peace we become.
And, to throw in, just being yourself and being honest goes so long,
Mhm.
to doing that. And I know I meet so many people, and I know within about a minute whether I want to keep talking to that person or not, just by, the initial response. And so when we're the thing I notice about cancer patients, and that was what I started to do with my cancer journey. I started reaching out through LinkedIn to cancer patients and survivors throughout the world. And the thing that blew me away, and it still blows me away to this day, is, when you're going through a life-changing situation like cancer, and it does change you. I mean, and if it doesn't change you, then something's really, really wrong, I think.
True. Yeah.
How honest the people that I've met are and willing to share and help. And that's what's blown me away, and it blows me away to this day. Uh, just how willing people are to be vulnerable and how willing they are to share. And that's such a incredibly beautiful thing. And it's something that I treasure beyond belief. And I thank you for being vulnerable and honest and sharing with our audience. And what a great time that I've had with you and your willingness to share about your journey, about your family. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, Cynthia. It's just been an honor.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I am so glad now that we have our own connection.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, we'll definitely have to keep in touch and, connect down the road on some great things because I think that you have a lot to give to people and yeah, it's definitely something that I will treasure. So thank you so much for your time. And I'd like to thank all of you out there who are watching To Be Your Own Hero. Please like, subscribe, make a comment in the comment section, and appreciate, like Cynthia was mentioning, the little things because they're not really, really not little things. These are the big things those are the things that we remember when, we're on our, I don't want to be morbid, but when we're on our deathbed, those are the things that we remember, the little things, and not the things that we have of this earth, the houses, the boats, the cars, all that kind of stuff. We cannot take that with us. But what we can take with us are the memories and the family and the friends and the relationships that we've built. So make the most out of each and every day. Make the most out of each and every hour, each and every minute, and each and every second. And I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season. And we will see you next week on To Be Your Own Hero. Thank you very much.